Burai here, and welcome to part 2 of the comparison video of the Acqua of the Back arc from a certain magical index. If you haven't seen part 1, I suggest you watch that one first. Unless you don't care and rather watch this video, then please continue watching. So before I begin, I'll be talking about episode 8 of season 3 of Index, and for the light novel, volume 16, chapters 2 and 3, although for chapter 3 it will just tackle part 1 and 2. So, let's begin. The first part of chapter 2 of the light novel tells us what happened before we see beetle-haired leader talk to the beaten Itsuwa. The war-torn level 0 is taken to the hospital and underwent surgeries for his injuries. The young doctor who performed the operation explained the specific injuries that Touma received from the previous fight. His entire body is covered in bruises from the blunt trauma, he has a slight concussion, his right shoulder and left foot show signs of dislocation, and his insides are also a bit damaged from the impacts. Even the doctor said that these injuries should be considered a miracle. The beetle-haired leader wanted to tell the hospitalized unlucky boy sorry, but the doctor wanted him to stay silent, mostly because he didn't know why he wanted to apologize. The doctor then pointed out to the unlucky boy's room, and the beetle-haired leader saw a girl who was either hanging from the bed or kneeling on the floor. She was wearing a white nun outfit. She was holding the unlucky boy's hand. This little lowly nun was Index. The leader of the Amakusa, Tatemiya Saiji, saw her and didn't have the guts to walk into that room. After looking at both of them one last time, he walks away from the centralized treatment room. He was extremely regretful that he couldn't do anything to help Touma. All the healing techniques passed down from generation to generation of the Amakusa wouldn't work. They couldn't even pray for his safety. Tatemiya and the rest of the Amakusa only had one goal: to protect the boy from Acqua, to protect their savior, to protect their comrade. But in the end, they could only be kicked away, leaving nothing but injuries. The light novel even adds that the Amakusa had known that their ability to blend into their surroundings had weakened, and at that point in time, the Amakusa had completely lost. Tatemiya knew that if he wanted to protect Touma, he had to stand up and fight back. At this point, the light novel and anime line back up. Also a bonus fact from the light novel, when Tatemiya threw Itsuwa to the ground, she had the audacity to talk back to Tatemiya. Specifically, didn't Tatemiya-san lose as well? The anime skips a lot of dialogue after this, especially Tatemiya's roaring motivational speech. The bulk of his speech is to do whatever they can to protect Touma. Even if there's a slight chance that they can win, they have to take it. If help would arrive, it would have been here sooner. If Priestess Sama was here, she would be able to handle Acqua, but the ones who can protect Touma were them, and no one else. Acqua will be back, whether they were ready or not. So pretty much a more intense speech than the one in the anime. After the regularly scheduled anime opening, the scene goes back to Acqua talking to the Pope, but the light novel states some minor details. Acqua wanted to get away from all the science and technology in the area, which explains why he's in the park. But even he knows the starry sky and the forest around him was filled with Academy City's technology. Even the phone he's using was embedded with magic, so that Academy City doesn't eavesdrop on their conversation. Their conversation is mostly the same as the light novel, with some extra details about the 4 members of God's right hand. After this, the alarm rings, and the drones from Academy City try to take down Acqua, with the light novel revealing that he fought with the drones, and was happy that there was a battlefield with no bloodshed. The next scene cuts to Sherry Cromwell answering a phone call from Ara Ara Osala, but before that, the light novel gives a brief prologue to the scene. Apparently, Sherry was teaching at a Royal Academy of Arts in England. Before Sherry picked up the call, she was discussing heraldries, and at that point of the lesson about shield-type heraldries. When Ursula tells Sherry that there is proof that Acqua was once one of the Knights of England, the light novel then explains the rest of the call. Basically, in the modern world, the title of Knight is like an outstanding civil award. Their background was unimportant. But to the dark side of England, there was a group known as the Knights of England. They were literally formed to protect the royal family at all costs, and like the samurai of the East, they would risk their lives to annihilate anyone who would dare harm the royal family. Their conversation then continues, with them stating that no one from the records of Buckingham Palace fits Acqua's description. Suggested that they think the information was false, they needed a background check on the Knight's shield heraldry. Coincidence? It stated that for someone to be nominated to be a knight, they should have a shield heraldry that symbolizes their family background. Apparently, an unknown person tried to order a shield heraldry but was cancelled halfway. The pattern should have the person's background, family history, and identity carved into the shield heraldry. Ursula faxes over 10 pieces of paper to try and figure out if Acqua really was a Knight of England. To summarize the rest of what happened, the papers showed that the shield heraldry had a dragon, a unicorn, and Selkie, who was a female ghost rumored to be based in England. With Sherry decoding the mystery, they arrive at this conclusion. Acqua was a mercenary born in England. He was primed to be nominated as a knight, but was unhappy he was chosen. Days before he was knighted, he ran away, presumably to God's right hand. Moving back to the anime, the Amakusa peeps start to prepare for their round 2 against Acqua, with a highly motivated Itsura prepping her spear with intense killer instincts. Ursula calls them, and with her Ara Ara aura, gives a brief summary of Acqua. More or less, this ties in with the light novel, with not a lot of info skipped. The next part of the anime brings us back to Acqua on the broken bridge, which, according to the light novel, is around 3 AM. From here, the anime pretty much lines up with the light novel. Probably the only difference is Itsura seems a bit more intense and angry in the light novel. The fight then begins, with some extra info from the light novel. Acqua noticed that Itsura is able to keep up with him, although slower by half a step. This does confuse him. The Amakusa had a certain rule when moving around. Simply put, if Itsura was a focal point, she had to move somewhere else. If the enemy wanted to pursue her, she would blend in with the crowd. At the moment the enemy was prepared to give up on her, Itsura would appear and become the focal point once again. The light novel makes this seem like a spell that increases visual activity and mobility. The cherry on top was that because Kanzaki was a saint, they were able to practice this over and over, much to Acqua's surprise. When Acqua broke free from the punishment of a killer, he told them about his attributes. In the anime, his alignment is with the Archangel Gabriel. He's able to utilize Holy Mother's veneration to a degree, which the light novel describes as to weaken the punishment. The light novel also adds more detail to this. His main attribute is the power of God, and can use other spells related to the Divine Mother, besides the veneration spell. He goes into more detail that he can use Divine Mother's mercy, which basically negates any and all punishment, even able to negate God's sin. The light novel adds that for the Amakusa to match a saint's speed, they used a spell that only a group of people could do. By each person tapping another person on the back, they would help recover the body's function and immediately get stronger. The problem with this spell is, if one person is out of sync, the whole group would be affected. As they were luring Acqua lower and lower, the Amakusa wanted to use their favorite spell against Acqua, but this required prep time, which is why they thought the punishment of a killer spell could delay him for just a bit. The anime shows a rune that Acqua used to try and flush them out. Originally, God's right seat can't use spells that ordinary humans use, but because Acqua had the spell of the Divine Mother's worship, it releases him from all limitations, bonds, and constraints. He had completely mastered human and angelic spells. So far, the fight scenes were in line with the light novel, but the 4th level battle did differ a bit. Acqua fought everyone, with Itsura being the focal point, while the rest of the Amakusa backed her up while preparing their favorite spell. When the Amakusa were ready to activate their spell, Acqua started to get stronger, knocking Tatamiya back and having him bounce 2 or 3 times. Acqua was about to use his supersonic speed to go and attack Itsura, but a spell had activated, restricting his movements. Following the anime, Acqua jumped up and Itsura performed Saint Destroyer, which unfortunately failed. With Itsura and the rest of the Amakusa down, Acqua was about to finish Itsura, but they both felt a certain killer instinct that didn't come from Acqua or anyone from the Amakusa. But they all knew who was emitting that killer aura, their master. Kanzaki and Acqua clashing marks the start of chapter 3 in the light novel, as well as Touma waking up in the hospital. Kanzaki wanted to do her best to protect Touma and the people of the Amakusa-style Church, and Touma, seeing a worried Index, made his heart ache, because he knew he couldn't stay in the hospital. All of this marks the end of episode 8 of the anime. Most of the fight scenes played out like the light novel, so there wasn't much of a difference, but all the dialogue that was missed was kind of important, at least in my opinion. Episode 9 will end the Acqua of the Back arc, and that will also be the last part of the comparison videos for this arc. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, ciao!